The night sky, the dark blanket above our heads adorned with shining stars, extending as far as the eye can see. The beauty and the majesty of the universe have inspired awe and reverence in the best brains.
Okay, I think what we'll do, we'll just proceed with the slides, because I think it's taking away all this, the internet, the bandwidth. So the main goal.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, if this is just a suggestion, if that video is extremely important for your presentation.
Civilization revealed the mystery of the origin and nature of the cosmos. The universe is made up of 14 vertically arranged planetary systems, or lokas. In the center of Jambudvip stands the most extraordinary divine golden mountain, Meru. The sun evaporates water from all over the creation and uses it as fuel. The Vedic literatures answer the question whether the cosmos always existed or it had a beginning. On the ocean, Vishnu expansion reclined on a serpent bed. From his navel arose a lotus on which Brahma was born. The super-intelligent being, Vishnu, reclining in mystic slumber amid the causal ocean. When he exhales, millions of universes issue from his body and expand, until he inhales when all the universes return within him.
Okay, I request everyone to mute their microphones. So this trailer was it was a kind of an introduction to what we are going to discuss.
Excuse me, Prabhu, your voice is low.
Just a moment. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes. So from what we saw in the video, I think it was too quick for everyone to make sense and to grasp. So we'll be talking about the contents of the 5th canto from the 16th chapter to the 26th chapter. So just hold on one moment. So this Vedic cosmology has been one of my most favorite of the Srimad Bhagavatam. I remember being an 8-year-old or maybe 9-year-old boy seated in the class of Radhapat Pankaj Prabhu back in 2009. And what I recall from that is that it was such a special experience because all of a sudden someone was telling me that there is much more than what I've studied in my science textbook. So that at this, along with although it interested me, more than that, it also gave me a chance to challenge the scientific ideology of uh, the astronomy that they perceive. So science is able to perceive this observable universe with their limited telescopes, which can see about millions of light years away. Now, this observable universe, as explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, can also be put like this. It is described each universe is like a Brahmanda with individual coverings which are 10 times the size of the previous one as you're going outwards. As we move in to the Brahmanda, the main universe, which is described like an eggshell. So right in the center, we have this disc-like shaped land, flat land, which is known as Bhu Mandala. And resting upon Bhu Mandala are various dvipas and oceans. Now, interesting that the Brahmanda is half filled with all the planetary systems, the luminaries and the stars, and below the Bhumandala, it is filled with Garbhodaka ocean. So now we are trying to zoom into the Bhumandala, the inner islands. So these are a set of concentric circles, which are those islands, and we are trying to move all the way inside. So I would request everybody to just take a screenshot of this particular image because we'll be coming back to it. This is a more simplified version. So you have the names, you have the numbers right in front of you. It'll be easier. And those of y'all who are watching this on a mobile device, I request you all to shift to a laptop because that would just improve the experience altogether. Because there will be a lot of images, so you can view it better. So in the 16th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj, he inquires to Shukdev Goswami about Maharaj Priyavrata, as described earlier in the previous cantos. So Maharaj Priyavrata, in the previous chapters, it is listed his entire dynasty. And Maharaj Priyavrata had created oceans and islands with his chariot wheels. So Parikshit Maharaj, he was interested in knowing about the details of the universe, starting with Jambudvip. So right in the center of our universe, both horizontally and vertically, you have Jambudvip. So as you all can see, this is the map of Jumbotron with its different directions. So while this entire Bhu Mandala represents a lotus flower with 7 islands as coverings, circular coverings of the lotus flower, and they are like concentric circles, the middle island is known as Jumbotron, and it is round like a lotus leaf, and it measures uh, 0.1 million yojanas in length and breadth. So those of you all who were present yesterday, can anyone tell me what is 1 yojana?
$8.5 miles?
Yes, approximately. That is correct, Mataji. Thank you. So 1 yojana is about, as it said. So now we are talking about this island, this main island, and we'll be describing all these heavenly, earthly heavenly realms. This is known as Bhauma Swarga. All these heavenly realms which are accessible from the earthly planets. So these are 9 varshas in total. Perhaps I can use pen. So we'll be describing all these various rivers. So right in the center, we have this pivotal mountain, which is like an inverted comb. It looks something like this. It's called Mount Meru, Sumeru. So we'll be coming back to that. Now these are all the tracts of lands, all the islands in Jumbotron, and each has a length of 9,000 yojanas, and they're separated by 8 mountain ranges. So you can see these are the mountain ranges in red. A more better image would be the next one. So a good thing about this image is that everything is already converted into miles for us. So we don't have to do the conversions. So as you can see here in the southernmost region lies Bharata Varsha, which is also where our Earth planet is situated. Then above Bharata Varsha is the Himalayan mountain range, and above that is Kim Purusha Varsha. Above that is Hemakuta Mountains, and then Hari Varsha. And on the sides, on the east and west, you have Bhadrashrava Varsha, which is kind of square-like but also bow-shaped. And then you have Ketumala Varsha on the west. And surrounding Mount Meru as its perimeter is the Nishada Mountains, the Malayavan Mountains, Nila Mountains, and Gandhamandana Mountain. Then above that you have Ramyaka Varsh, Hiranya Maya Varsh, and Uttar Kuru Varsh, and separated by its individual mountains as boundaries. And as you can see, this island is situated and it's surrounded by a saltwater ocean. So sometimes in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a description of this, the 7 islands, the 7 lands and 7 seas. So they are not talking about the 7 continents of the world and the 7 seas of the world. That's a misunderstanding. It is rather talking about the concentric islands and its oceans that surround Jumbotron. So we are talking about something, a phenomena, which is outside the Earth's sphere. So this is a more better example, a more better illustration. And so as you can see, there you have all these mountain ranges very neatly arranged, and surrounding Mount Meru are these mountains which are almost like lines, and then there are supporting mountains around the belt of Mount Meru. So right in the center of where Mount Meru is placed, you can see this green tract of land. So this green tract of land is actually called Ilavrita Varsha. It is right in the center, and we shall describe who resides in each of these islands very soon. Now we're going to describe the Golden Sumeru Mountain. Surrounding the Sumeru Mountain, you have these 4 mountain belts on the side: Mandara, Meru Mandhara, Suparshva, and Kumudha. And each of them have a tall tree as a flag post. So the base of Mount Sumeru, this is the illustration for everyone. So we can picture Mount Meru as a golden mountain right in the center of the universe. Now let's not focus on the townships which are above Mount Sumeru. We'll come back to that later. But right now, I want everybody to observe the height of Mount Meru, which is considered about 84,000 yojanas above the earthly planets. Its width is about 16,000 yojanas, and along with its width, it is also 16,000 yojanas deep inside the Bhu Mandala. And on top, it has a diameter of 32,000 yojanas. So here is a good, this is a good image because everything is converted into miles for all of us. So we are talking about incredible distances outside the Earth. We all know the diameter of Earth is about 8,000 yojanas, 8,000 miles or 12,000 kilometers. But here we are talking about 672,000 miles from the Earth. So naturally, we can understand that we are talking about something which is outside the Earth globe. So this is a more a top view or a side view of Mount Meru with all the mountains on the side. So we don't have to worry about the numbers because we are not Vishwakarma, the architect who's building all this. All we have to concern with is who's present in each island, and basically just understand a rough geography of this entire region. So very soon we'll be talking about what is in each island. So starting with the dimensions of all these lands. So all the mountain ranges, they have a width of about 2,000 yojanas, and it has a height of about 10,000 yojanas. Along with that, it extends from east to west, almost like a straight line, from one end of the salt water ocean right to the other end. So you can observe all these mountains, they follow the same pattern. So when I talk about its width, I am referring to uh, this measurement, the breadth of every mountain, which is about 2,000 yojanas, and then it's about 10,000 yojanas in length. So it keeps every mountain starting. So it's about 10,000 yojanas over here, and then from there it keeps reducing by 10% as we go down. So those are the dimensions of each mountain on both the sides. Now the Ilavrata Varsh is about 9,000 yojanas. You can see the converted calculations in miles. And it's square shaped, so its length and breadth is roughly the same, about 9,000 yojanas. And right in the center of Ilavrata Varsh is Mount Meru. So we'll be describing the Ilavrata Varsh and Mount Meru. Coming back to this image. So now this image would make more sense because now we know these straight lines, these horizontal lines are but mountain ranges. And those are islands in between with their dimensions, 9,000 yojanas, as you can see. So now this drawing makes a bit of sense. Now we are moving in closer. So we are moving in to Ilavrata Varsha. This whole region is Ilavrata Varsha, and Mount Meru is right in the center. Now it is described in Srimad Bhagavatam in about the 11th verse of the 16th chapter, where it mentions about 4 mountains around Sumeru, namely Mandara, Meru Mandhara, Supraswa, and Gomudha mountains. And each mountain also has a tree. It has a mango tree, a rose apple tree, a kadamba tree, and a banyan tree on their summits. And each of them, they stand like almost like flagstaffs. Their widths and heights roughly about 0.1 thousand yojanas or 1.1 thousand yojanas. So their branches, they spread to a radius of 1.1 thousand yojanas. So as you can see, these are the different mountains. So I shall start on describing each region. So starting with Mandara. So the Mandara region, which is in the east direction, has a lake of milk, and it has the Nandana garden, which is a heavenly garden. So anyone recalls this Nandana garden, which is also referred to the one which was in Lanka, which is very beautiful. So they have trees which bear mango fruits, and anyone who drinks this mango juice, which is also known as arunodha, their bodies, they become fragrant, and the perfume is spread across the atmosphere for thousands of yojanas. So that is the glories of this Mandara region. So it is described in, I think, the 18th verse, where the Yaksha wives, they would come and drink the mango juice from these lakes, and their bodies would automatically become fragrant, and that fragrance, that perfume, would spread for thousands of miles. And next, we have Meru Mandhara, which is here in the south. So, Meru Mandhara has a lake of honey, and it has a garden called Chaitra Ratha, and it has a rose apple or a jambu tree as its flag post. Now, the story of this place is that the rose apple juice, when it mixes with mud, because this river is flowing, as the honey is flowing uh, mixed with the rose apple juice, when it hits the banks of the river, when it mixes with the mud and it's dried by the air and sunshine, it produces gold. And this is the gold that all the citizens surrounding this particular region, they use for decorating themselves and for decorating their wives. So all these are all heavenly realms that are all within the Bhu Mandala, or you can say within the earthly region. Then the next one is Suparsva, towards the west. And here you have a lake of sugarcane juice with a garden called Vaibrajaka and a tree called a Kadamba tree. And it has rivers of honey, just like Meru Mandhara. And over here, there are 5 rivers of honey that flow down from the tree hollows, and they saturate the land with pleasing fragrances. So, after that, we come towards this final tract of land, which is in the north, Kumuda. So here, Kumuda, it has pure water lakes. So for once, something which we have seen. And it has a garden called Sarvato Bhadra with a banyan tree, and it supplies milk, yogurt, honey, ghee, molasses, fruit grains, clothes, bedding, sitting place, and ornaments to all these people. And everyone is naturally very happy with all these necessities that are supplied to them. So these are actually heavenly realms that are accessible to those beings who have already completed their pious activities in the heavenly planets. So once they have completed their pious activities, they come down to these heavenly lands, these heavenly regions, and they live here for a span of 10,000 years. So life in this region is just like Treta Yuga, because in the Treta Yuga, people used to live for a span of 10,000 years. Also, along with the duration of life, even the health was much better. People would not age. There would be no anxiety, and the women would only conceive in the later years of their lives. So towards the ends of their life, they would conceive. So there were no tribulations as such. So here it is described: the water of the first lake tastes just like milk, the water of the second like honey, and that of the third like sugarcane juice, and the fourth lake is filled with pure water. So for those who want to just fancy how it looks like, so that is a river. It's a river of, you can think of it like sugarcane juice. I just found this online and it looked very nice. I thought this would give a good description. I was thinking about, you know, how we can picture the trees, because when I say that there is a tree which is 1,000 yojanas in height, or it's these are incredible sizes. You know, these are I'm talking about 8,000 miles, which is the diameter of the Earth. So you have a tree which is the size of the diameter of the Earth. How can you picture that? So these are some concept images of trees that are even piercing the clouds and are so tall. Has anyone seen the movie Avatar? In that movie, there are these huge, gigantic trees. So, you know, this is a very nice image, because here you're seeing a tree which is actually larger than the surrounding mountains around it. So I thought this would be a very nice image for all of us to see, so that you all can visualize what these trees look like. You know, something like this, gigantic trees. This is a terrible image, but perhaps the next one is better. Yes. So this one, we can see all these trees. They're on top of the mountains, the supporting mountains. They're right here. So these are the trees. They're on the top of every mountain on all the four cardinal directions. And all these trees are what we have described already. So now we are talking about size of all these objects. So just now we described the size of these trees. So right here is a tree. If we had to make sense of picturing one of these trees, which is about 1,000 miles, and you place that tree next to the map of Europe. So there you can see the size of the tree is actually a greater part of the continent, the European continent, and all these European countries. So when we are talking about these incredible pieces of lands, all these trees and mountains, we are talking about something with an incredible size. Now, because we are beings of the Kali Yuga, we have, and most of us just come from a city, so we haven't even seen tall banyan trees and tall fern trees. So what to speak of understanding these tall trees in the cosmos? This is a very nice image as it sums up every island very nicely. All the mountains, it's a nice three-dimensional video. You can see all the regions. So we were just talking about these trees over here. Now, as we are moving up towards Mount Meru, you can see there are these pencil-like mountains that are protruding upwards. They're known as Kesharachal Mountains. I'm referring to these pencil-like mountains that are supporting the Mount Meru. So these are all 20 mountains that are beautifully arranged around the foot of Mount Meru, like the filaments of the whorls of lotus flower. And they have their respective names. These are called Kesharachal Mountains. Now I was thinking about, because I've never seen such pencil-shaped mountains. So just for everyone, for all of this to make sense, I was looking for some mountains which can look the same. So as you can see, these are the filaments. So I came across this. These are some mountains in New Mexico City. So they have a very interesting topography. If you see, they are pencil-shaped. So perhaps if you want to visualize what these Kesharachal mountains would look like, they would perhaps look like these mountains. So there, right in the center, Mount Meru, and that the Ilavrata Varsh. Now, if you can see these dots that are surrounding Mount Meru, these are all mountains. All these dots. These are the Kesharachal Mountains. And even on the outskirts of the Kesharachal Mountains, there are another 8 mountains that are surrounding Mount Meru. And both the mountains put together, they extend for about 16,000 yojanas, 18,000 yojanas in length. And each mountain is about 9,000 yojanas in length and 2,000 yojanas in height and width. So incredible numbers here. Now would be a good time to describe the townships of the 8 principal Lokpalas right on the top of Mount Sumeru. So you can picture this. If this bottle would be Mount Meru. So I'm talking about the top portion of Mount Meru. So this is the top portion of Mount Meru with all the principal cities, townships of various demigods. Starting with, in the center, you have the Brahmapuri, which is also known as Manovati, which is a huge golden palace. And then surrounding this golden palace are various other townships of other demigods. Like of Vayu, we have Gandhavati. Of Indra, we have Amaravati. Of Agni, we have Tejovati. Of Yama in the south, we have Samyamani. These are all located at the top. So Mahodaya of Kuvera. And each of these surrounding townships are about 1/4 the size of the city of Brahma. Of course, these are not the places where the demigods reside. This is just a place where the demigods, they come to sport. You can also think of this town as a resort where all these demigods, they come to sport the denizens of the heavenly planets. So right here is Mount Meru in the center, and right on top you can see the cities of all these demigods. Now, towards the 17th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, or the 5th canto, there they describe the descent of the river Ganges, how Mother Ganga descends onto the earth. So there is one story of King Sagara, where the descendants of King Sagara, who is known as Bhagiratha, he invokes Ganga through Lord Shiva. And then there is another instance where in the Satyuga, when Vamandev appeared just before the end of Satyuga, there was a king known as Bali Maharaj, and Bali Maharaj, he had conquered. He was an asura. He was a grandson of Prahlad, and he had conquered all the heavenly realms, and he was occupying the Earth planet. He had even managed to kick Indra out of his own abode, or from the Swargaloka. So all these demigods, they had no option but to go hiding in mountain caves. And at that point of time, they approached Lord Vishnu, and they asked him to resolve the matter. And immediately Lord Vishnu, he appears as Vamana, a dwarf, and he goes with an umbrella and a kamandalu to the palace of Bali Maharaj, begging for just 3 foot of land. So Bali Maharaj, he being very compassionate, because he was a devotee of the Lord, he said, I can give you all my possessions. Please ask for something more. And Vaman Dev, he says, just give me these 3 steps of land. And when Bali Maharaj, he agrees to the boon, that time Vaman Dev, he expands his body in a really incredible astronomical size. And when he raises his feet, so as he's covering all the planetary systems, all the lower planetary systems and the upper planetary systems, his toe pierces the coverings of the Bhu Mandala, or the Brahmanda. So right here you could say the toe of the Lord pierced the universe, the coverings of the universe. And as a result of that, the causal ocean which surrounds the universe, it began to flow through the whole of the coverings, and it began to flow downwards. So here you can see Mahavishnu, who resides outside each of these universes. In fact, these universes are they appear from the pores of Mahavishnu. So we are talking about one such universe, which is our universe, and surrounding all these universes is this giant ocean, the Garbhodaka ocean. So because of the holes that were created, this Garbhodaka ocean, which is actually pure like the Ganges, it started to flow inwards. So this is the graph of how the causal ocean descends. So first it enters the ocean, the universe, and it goes to the Satyaloka, and from the Satyaloka it falls to the Dhruvaloka planetary system, which is the pole star. And from the pole star, through various spaceships, it lands on the Chandraloka, which is the moon. And from the moon, it flows down to the top of Mount Meru, which we just described. And from there, it gets subdivided into 4 directions. It gets divided into Seta, which flows in the east, then Chakshu, which flows in the west, Bhadra in the north, and Alaknanda in the south. So this is the route of Ganga. So it goes through the pole star, it falls in the Saptarishis, the Big Dipper, and from there, through all the spacecrafts, it is passed onto the moon planet. And then from the moon planet, it falls on Mount Meru. So this is the path of Ganga. And from there, it gets divided into 4 directions. This is a very nice image. Everyone can see how the Ganges are getting divided. And also they can, there's a very nice view of all the townships surrounding the top of Mount Meru. Now, as it is flowing in the south direction, we are talking about the branch, the Alaknanda branch of river Ganges, which is flowing south. So that lands on the head of Lord Shiva, because the force of Ganga is so strong that it can push the earth planet into the Garbhodaka ocean. So Lord Shiva, he's seated in Kailash and he's bearing the force of Ganga. And from there, the Ganga becomes visible to all of us in its gross form. So from there, Ganga becomes visible. So this is actually, this is not just a gross river or simply any other kind of river. This is descending from beyond the material world, from the causal ocean. So now we describe the 9 islands within Jambudvipa. So as we are already familiar with the names, now we will describe who resides in each of these islands. So for the pious people, there is offered 8 heavenly varshas, which is known as Bhauma Swarga. And these are all tracts of land except Bharat Varsha, which is here towards the south. So except this piece of land, the remaining land is all heavenly tracts. They're all heavenly realms. And they're all accessible from the earthly planets, but it is not visible to the people of Kali Yuga. So for all those people, this is meant for those people who enjoy a pious life, and towards the remainder of their lives, they spend their time here after leaving the heavenly planets. So they have long, youthful lives in all these 8 varshas, and all these demigods, they live for 10,000 years, as described. There is ambience, there is enjoyment, there is peace, and the Lord appears in each of these varshas in various expansions. So starting with the Ilavrita Varsha, which is right in the center. I don't know if we can use. Okay. No. So the Ilavrita Varsha, which is right in the center. So Lord Shiva is said to reside in this region of land. And the presiding deity of Ilavrita Varsha is Sankarshana. It is said that Lord Shiva resides here with Durga Devi and her assistants. And Durga Devi does not like any male entering this area. So any man who tries to enter this region, he immediately becomes a female. So Lord Shiva is the only male resident in this, and he worships the deity of Sankarshana along with Durga Devi, and he enjoys life with Durga Devi in this tract of land. Then after Ilavrita Varsha, we have Bhadrashva Varsha, which is here in the east, which is comparatively a large piece of land as opposed to these surrounding islands. So this Bhadrashava Varsha, it is inhabited by Bhadrashava, who is said to be, I think, the son of Manu. And over here he worships Hayagriva, which is the form of the Lord with a face like a horse, who had delivered the knowledge to Lord Brahma, because there was a demon who stole the knowledge, all the 4 Vedas from Lord Brahma. So the Lord took a form of Hayagriva and he killed these demons, and he again rescues the knowledge in the form of Shruti, and he returns it to Brahma. So this is the form of the Lord which is worshipped by Bhadrashava. So a very interesting thing which I'm reading at the moment is, and this is with respect to the Ilavrita Varsha, the curse, this curse of Durga Devi, it is effective only in the place between Kailasha, Karavira Mountains in Ilavrita Varsha towards the southern direction of Mount Sumeru. So actually this is the region where Kailasha is. So they're talking about this portion of land. Well, I wouldn't say it is, yeah, this portion of land. So if you can see these mountain ranges, it's quite tiny if you observe, if you compare it with the surrounding mountain ranges. But that is considered as the Kailasha Mountain, the Kailasha and Karavira Mountains. So the curse is applicable in this region. So anyone who tries to enter Kailasha would be affected by the curse. Now, after the Bhadrashava Varsha comes the Ketumala Varsha, which is right bank opposite towards the west. And over there, Lakshmi Devi, Prajapati's Samvatsara and his children's, they are worshipping Kamadev. So here, the Lord, he is present as Kamadev, and he is worshipped by Lakshmi Devi as well as the sons of Prajapati Samvatsara and all his children, along with all the citizens. And they enjoy life for tens of thousands of years. And next, after that, is the Ramyaka Mountains, which is towards the north. So I'm just talking about this region of land. It's the innermost region between the Nila Mountains and the Sweta mountain range. So this tract of land is occupied by Vaivaswata Manu, and Vaivaswata Manu worships the form of Matsya, So those of you all who know Matsya is that the fish incarnation of the Lord that saves the universe during its partial dissolution towards the starting of the Satyuga. So this form of the Lord is worshipped by Vavaswata Manu. Then going ahead, in Hiranyamaya, which is a tract between Uttar Kuru and Ramyaka Varsh, there you have Hiranyamaya. And here in Hiranyamaya, it is inhabited by a being known as Aryaman, and he worships the deity of Kurma. And up all the way in the north, you have the Uttar Kuru Varsh, where Bhumi Devi is worshipping the form of Varaha. As we all know, there was once a big fight between Varaha and Hiranyaksh, because Hiranyaksh, he had plundered all the resources of the earth planet Bhumi Devi, and he was just mining through all the mountains for gold, so much so to an extent that Bhumi Devi, she lost her orbit and she fell into the Garbhodaka ocean. So Varaha at that time, which is a boar form of the Lord, he appears and he saves Bhumi Devi. So Bhumi Devi is worshipping Varahadev until till today in this tract of land. Then when we are moving south, we have the Hari Varsha. And in Hari Varsha, Prahlad Maharaj is said to be present, and he's worshipping Narsinghadev. And then below that, you have the Kim Purusha Varsha. Now, this is a very interesting region because it is right next to the Earth planet. And here it is said that Hanuman and all the warriors, all the monkey warriors who fought in the battle of Ramayana, they are said to be residing in this tract of land. And Hanuman is praying to Lord Ram in this region. And then as we go down, we reach finally this tract of Bharata Varsha, which is said by Srila Prabhupada as the field of fruitive activities. This land is the region of fruitive activities. So Bhadrashava is the son of Dharmaraj. It's a small correction because I said he's a son of Manu. So the following chapters, the 18th chapter, they are all prayers of the residents of Jambudvipa to all these forms of the Lord. Now, I won't read through all this because they are verses that each of these citizens chant. So Vavaswata Manu is worshipping Lord Matsya, who met him at the end of Chakshusha Manvantara. And then towards the end, we have Aryaman, the chief of the Pitris, who along with other inhabitants are worshipping Lord Kurma, which is the tortoise form of the Lord. Now in Bharata Varsha, Narada Muni is said to be worshipping the form of the Lord as Nara Narayan Rishis, who are none other than Krishna and Arjuna in their expansions. So they're also considered as two hills as we go north for the all these, the five yatras that we make towards the north. So there you have these two mountain ranges, the Nar Narayan hills that are considered as deities of these two rishis. So Narada Muni is said to be worshipping this form of the Lord. Now, they're described various mountain rivers and all the inhabitants of Bharatavarsha. Now, Bharatavarsha, some may think is the land of India, because we have the Himalayan range over here. But actually, this is outside the Earth globe. In fact, the Earth globe is but a tiny part of Bharatavarsha, as you will see in the next slide. So right there, here you have Bharatavarsha, which are about a set of 9 islands. And these 9 islands were because of Sagara, the sons of Sagara, as they were driving, they drew their chariots through these regions. Their wheels created ditches which caused the ocean to move in and form these 9 islands. Of all these 9 islands, you will notice the 7th one is our Earth planet. Right here. I hope everyone can see. So this is our Earth planet, and it is known as Bharata Khande. So here, the Himalayan mountains, they have this an incredible size of 80,000 miles as their height. So, and the Earth, which has a diameter of mere 8,000 miles. So here you have the comparison. So automatically one knows that these huge mountains cannot exist on the earthly planets. Rather, they are connected with the Earth planet. So I think at this point of time, before we move forward, let us take a break for 10 minutes. Also, does anyone have any questions thus far till this point?
Prabhuji, I just have one small, not question, just one, one concept to be cleared right now.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
under this Himalaya, this Bharatvarsha, what I'm understanding is divided into these 9 mountains, out of which the 7th is our Earth. But this all 9 parts are forming the Bharatvarsha, and our Earth is Bharatkhanda. This is what you are trying to explain us, right?
Exactly, Mati.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Some more questions? Because really difficult stuff.
And Prabhuji, which would be then Moon or Mars?
Yes, Prabhuji, we are coming to that. So just for everyone to know that all the planets, they are placed on orbits which are above the height of Mount Meru. So in the later section, we will see each of the orbits as described in Srimad Bhagavatam with their individual heights. So as of now, we are talking about the Earth plane, the flat. So I hope that answers your question, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Sarvat Pranam. Fantastic. So actually, my understanding was that Himalayas should be on this. So what we see is a different Himalayas here, which is in the north of India.
Yes.
And this Himalayas is different. Let's say Himalayas, which is Vedic Himalayas, which obviously with our materialistic eyes we cannot see. But the Himalayas that we see is on that number 7, right?
Yes, Prabhuji. The Himalayas that we are perceiving. So there are 2 ways of perceiving this. If we follow the works of Dr. Richard L. Thompson, Sadaput Prabhu, so he describes a very interesting thing. There are these different mountains in Central Asia that actually look like all the mountains of Jambudvipa. And he's comparing the Jambudvipa with the Central Asia. So he's saying that there is a connection between both of these realms. However, we are not able to access this. This requires some sort of a multi-dimensional and a subtle view through which a portal through which one can see this entire cosmology, which I shall be describing in more detail in the later sections. As of now, what we need to understand is just like how we have the localized Vrindavan Dham in the north of India, but in different pastimes, it is described Balaram expands Vrindavan into the size of a planet. So we can similarly perceive the Himalayan mountains, which are present in the north of India. They are expanded subtly into these huge, gigantic mountain ranges, which are present beyond the Earth planet. So that is how we can perceive. So I hope that answers. It will be answered in a much better way in the later section. But as of now, all we need to understand is that we have this mountain range, this incredibly huge mountain range towards the north.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you. So basically, this Mount Kailash,
Yes.
which is, I've been part of, let's say, above the Himalayas. It is one of the mountain ranges where, a lot of people have, been able to successfully, touch the peak in Himalayas. But when you talk about, Mount Kailash, which what the Mount Kailash, I mean, in the material world that we know. Okay.
Yes.
I went to Google Earth and I saw Mount Kailash. But the fact is that nobody has been able to scale that peak so far, although it is not as high maybe as the Himalayas is, but it is very, very, very treacherous, and multiple attempts have failed to scale the peak of Mount Kailash. And there is Mansarovar, and there is all these things which I saw with Google Maps and all that. But it's quite treacherous. So in the Vedic
Asia, and you can see how these lines, they kind of correspond with various mountain ranges over here. And you can see the lowest one, which is the Himalayan mountains. So one can think that maybe perhaps Jambudvipa is what we perceive as Central Asia, but actually it is not. There are regions within Central Asia which act like portals. So through these portals, through the subtle body, one can access the higher divine realms, and that is how we can access this region, this whole region. So for better understanding, has anyone watched the movie Interstellar?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes. So in that, there is this concept of wormholes, where you kind of bend through space-time. It's almost like a portal where you're traveling incredible distances. Physically, your line of sight distance may be millions of miles, but the actual travel would be just thousands of miles. So there would be an appropriate image after this, which I shall show everyone. But for now, that's all we need to understand. So Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavatam, in the 5th canto, that among the 9 Varshas of Jambudvip, the tract of land known as Bharatvarsh is understood to be the field of fruitive activities. The other 8 Varshas to be meant for very highly elevated pious persons. After returning from the heavenly planets, they enjoy the remaining results of their pious activities there. So as described in Ramayana, Sugriva describes all these realms to the monkeys. And when Lord Ram, he asked Sugriva, how do you know this geography so well? So Sugriva, he describes that when Vali was trying to kill me, when he was trying to assassinate me, at that point of time, I was running for my life through all these realms, through all these 9 Varshas. So I remember all the routes, all the mountains, all the oceans clearly. So sometimes, we may land ourselves in problems, but those problems may later on, they may become solutions, or they may become a boon altogether. So because Sugriva was put into this situation, he was later able to assist the monkey soldiers in navigating through the universe. Then there is a portion where Bhima was going north, and on his way to Kubera, which is in the northeastern direction. So he needed Hanuman's cooperation before accessing that region. So that, as you can imagine, how we see even in the world today, there are certain buildings and there are certain countries which are inaccessible. It is impossible that one will ever be allowed to get inside the White House or the Pentagon or the Parliament of India. These are all restricted areas, or the CIA headquarters. So similarly, we can understand here there are areas which are restricted to the humans of the earthly realms, because these to access these realms, we need higher qualification, we need karmic qualification, and also for some of them we need to have a higher consciousness. Those of you all who are present in yesterday's lecture, we need to understand that this universe is a consciousness based universe. One can't simply travel through mere distance. Rather, one travels to higher planets with an increased consciousness. So most of Jambudvip is a group of divine realms that the qualified can access via gateways somewhere within the mountainous regions of Central Asia. To the advanced personalities, those realms are experienced as part of the greater earth. So one can imagine, this is somewhere north of India, and through meditation, one can push his subtle body upwards through a gateway, and perhaps the subtle body travels greater distances. So a person with greater vision, while he is present in this region, because of his meditation, perfection of meditation, he is able to see beyond the regular vision through the subtle body. So a person who may be advanced at an intermediate level may be able to perceive the Himalayan mountains, which are outside the Earth planet. as through the subtle body he is traveling 80,000 miles upwards. And someone who has perfected his meditation beyond that can perhaps see beyond the Himalayas. He can see the land known as Kim Purusha, where all the monkey soldiers reside. And further, the person who has perfected his practice can jump across these regions, see Hari Varsha, then Ilavrita Varsha. So as you perfect your meditation and as your practice of devotion excels, and as your consciousness advances, so your vision, your subtle vision also increases, and you are able to perceive the universe. So this is what the higher demigods can see. They can see the entire Jambudweep simultaneously. So they can see all these islands, all these countries. I keep using the word island and countries because, you know, the Sanskrit word Varsha and Dvipa mean the same, but actually it's quite different. These are the different countries situated. So to explain it rather simply, on the left-hand side is the bird eye view of Manhattan city, or the top view. So this is what the demigods can see, which is a more three-dimensional, a higher dimensional view. And what the humans can perceive is but a two-dimensional street map of Manhattan city. So both are true, both are the correct understanding of perceiving the universe. However, one category can perceive the universe at a higher dimension compared to the other, and one has a higher consciousness than the other. So hence, although I can virtually travel from Times Square to Central Park in this map, but I will not be able to perceive it in 3 dimensions because I don't have that consciousness. So even if you try to make journey without qualification to these tracts of heavenly realms, you will not be able to access it in 3 dimensions because your qualification isn't simply there. So now we are talking about the 6 islands of Bhu Mandala. So before that, we need to understand this basic concept of the stereographical projection. So when I was training as a pilot, at that point of time, we were studying maps. And while studying maps, we came across this in our general navigation classes of how there are different projections in order to make navigation more simpler. This applies to to aircrafts, it applies to ships. So even in the past, there were maps constructed through different projections on the plane, through which one can recreate the sphere of the earth with various countries at different places of the latitudes and longitudes, and that makes the travel simpler. So as you can, to just explain it simply, these are the various kinds of projections. Now, this is too complicated. We don't have to delve into this, but all we need to understand is, let's say there is a sphere. We have a sphere, and the sphere, just imagine you try to compress the sphere into a 2-dimensional circle. So when you try to compress the sphere into a circle, it forms a stereographical projection. So everything on the far end kind of expands and spreads out. So which is why in the previous image, you will see that South America or Africa or Australia are perhaps gigantic. They're even larger than Russia. But we know what is the true size of each continent. So this is because of the stereographical projection. As you see, these meridians that shoot out, these straight lines that are going out, these are known as meridians, and these concentric circles are known as latitudes. So the meridians, as they are going outwards, the latitudes, the area covered with the meridians and the latitudes is increasing and expanding. So what you may perceive in one box may maybe what you perceive in one box all the way in the north. So this area, simply put, this region, this whole region of Australia on this part of the map may equal this portion of Russia. It is simply because of the stereographical projection that we are kind of stretching out the areas towards the far ends. So this is how we can understand how a sphere can be compressed into a circle. So that doesn't mean that the earth is flat. No, this is simply for better navigation, for illustration of how we can travel. Of course, there are limitations with this projection. We are unable to see the southern part of the world. We cannot perceive the South Pole. So those are the limitations. But if we have a stereographical projection of the South, then we can even see the South Pole for that matter. So this is the North Pole, which is which will act as the center for the projection, and that is how the area is spread out. So similarly, even Bhu Mandala, what we see in the Bhagavatam, is rather a stereographical projection of the land, which are actually planets. So how do we understand this? We will see later on. So just to illustrate how it would look like, I selected this image. So this is a bird eye view of the city of Paris. Now, obviously, if you use your logical inference, you will know that there cannot be clouds on all the sides. The city doesn't look like this. This is but a perception of a projection. So if I had to flatten it out, and if I had to view it in a 3D, it would look something different. So that is also how we can perceive the Bhu Mandala. So these are the various rings around the Bhu Mandala. There are islands surrounded with their respective oceans. So just for better illustration, I would ask, okay, Daddy, can you please spotlight my video? Yeah.
You're already spotlighted, okay?
Have you spotlighted the video?
Yes, you're already spotlighted.
Okay, so I will stop sharing the presentation.
Do you want me to move the camera away so that all of us can see?
Yeah.
Once I'll come.
Wait. they are running away.
So can everyone see this model?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji.
So I thought, for better illustration, it's always good to have a three-dimensional model. This is exactly, well, it's not precisely as per the measurements, but I've tried to be as accurate as possible. So this phone is not a part of the creation. It's just my microphone here. So these are all the concentric circles. Starting with right in the center, where we have our Bhuloka, or the Mount Sumeru.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna.
So as you all can see, this right here is Mount Meru. Okay, and as we are moving out, here are all the mountain ranges towards the edge, and this blue portion is the saltwater ocean. As we move out, here this first area of land, it's known as Plakshadweep. Now surrounding Plakshadweep with a similar width, rather over here it looks much bigger, but of a similar width we have a sugarcane juice, which is illustrated as green in color. Surrounding the sugarcane juice, we have Salmalina Dweep. Salamali Dweep. And then surrounding Salamali Dweep is the ocean of liquor. Surrounding the ocean of liquor, we have Kushadweep. And surrounding Kushadweep, we have its ocean of clarified butter, illustrated in red. And then outside that, we have Kronchadweep. Beyond that, you have the Milk Ocean. And then you have the Shakad Dweep, and you have the yogurt, ocean of yogurt. Then you finally have Pushkara Dweep, and it has its clear water ocean. Beyond that is a golden land, which is uninhabited. And surrounding that you have the Loka Mountains, which mark as the boundaries. Also on the Pushkar Dweep, which is this outside island, right in the center of Pushkar Dweep, we have the Manasotara mountain, upon which the sun god revolves around the Bhu Mandala, around Mount Meru.
गुड हो, बहुत होमवर्क किया प्रभु जी आप।
उसका अकाउंट मैं दूंगी बाद में।
So now everybody can see. This is how all the islands look like. We have all these islands with their respective oceans. And then finally we have Pushkar Dweep, where we have the Manasotara mountain range. And above the Manasotara mountain range is the place where the sun revolves around the earth. Now you have these respective distances. The distance from Mount Meru to the edge of Manasotara mountain is about 126 million miles. The distance from Mount Meru to the last ocean is about 202.8 million miles. Then the distance from Mount Meru to the edge of Loka Mountain is about 1 billion miles. Now, of course, as I said, the universe has a diameter of about 4 billion miles. So that means we would have a radius from Mount Meru to the edge of the universe of about 2 billion miles. So this is just half the distance of the Brahmanda, right from Sumeru to the edge of Loka Mountains. And beyond Loka Mountains is said to be the region of Alokavarsh. So these are all the various heavenly lands and oceans. Now, as we discuss this, we come across a very interesting concept of the geocentric model and the heliocentric model of the universe, where as per the Vedic cosmology, the Earth is considered as to be the center, and all the other planets are said to be revolving around the Earth. Whereas the heliocentric model, which has been proposed by the modern day scientists, places the sun as the center in the solar system. Now, this Bhu Mandala, if you see the illustrations, they very much resemble the orbits of the solar system. And in fact, it's not a coincidence, but the distances from each from Mount Meru to each Dvipa, or towards the edge of each Dvipa, is it corresponds to the distance of the sun to the planet. So we are talking about the orbital distance, the physical line of sight distance. It corresponds with the distance, the physical distance of these concentric islands. So one can think, oh, that's some cosmic coincidence. But we have a way to perceive that. And going forward, we'll try to understand that. So here is the heliocentric model that's proposed by the scientist. And then we have a geocentric model proposed by the Vedic cosmology by Bhagavatam and Surya Siddhanta. Now, if you notice in the previous slide, this is the orbit of the Earth around the Sun, and that is the orbit of Mars around the Sun. So in the next slide, we can see how the orbit of Mars kind of changes. Right before it continues its regular orbit, at one point it kind of creates this epicycle, because it's actually trying to revolve around the sun, but it's not quite revolving around the sun. It's forming this epicycle because the sun is moving with its angular velocity. And so this is something known as retrograde motion, where it is kind of creating an epicycle and trying to imitate the movement of the sun. So this is explained very nicely by Einstein in the theory of relativity, where you can have two objects that are rotating around each other. Now, depending on perspective, simply put, one can differentiate and relate whether one object is moving or the other. So in this case, the scientists, they're suggesting that it could be the Earth that is moving around the sun. But the Vedic cosmology suggests that it is just a matter of relativity, where the sun is moving around the Earth, just like how we see every day. The sun rises from the east and sets in the west. It is because of the Vedic phenomenon and the theory of relativity of, instead of having the sun fixed, let's just have the Earth fixed and have the sun rotate around the Earth. So it's just a matter of a different perspective, simply put. So, for example, one can be on the moon and think that the Earth is revolving around the moon, but this is just a matter of perspective, because a person who is on the Earth planet thinks that the moon is revolving around the Earth. So the Vedic cosmology suggests that the correct understanding is having the sun rotating around the Earth and having the Earth placed in the center. So this is the geocentric model that is proposed by the Shastra. Now, one may argue, okay, then what about the solar system? Or what about the arguments that are proposed by the scientists? Well, the modern science, there are very thin lines which they kind of bend. The rules are sort of bent from time to time to ease the understanding of a certain concept. So, for example, in navigation, or while a person is using a telescope to look out to other planets, so he converts those latitudes and longitudes into geocentric coordinates. So those are coordinates of the Earth planet. And why does he do that? Simply for the reason because the telescope is on the Earth planet. Now the ships and the aircrafts today, they convert these planetary coordinates into geocentric coordinates because they are on the Earth planet. So this is what the Vedic cosmology is also suggesting, that everything is converted into geodetic coordinates. And that is how we use, that is how it helps in navigation. Interesting thing, even the space agencies like NASA and SpaceX even they, to plan their orbits, to plan their missions, they have to convert the latitudes and longitudes of the orbit of Mars, or say any planet that they're planning a trip to. They have to convert it into Earth coordinates. And that's how they plan their trip, because those are distances, those are coordinates with which they can relate to. So the ancient voyagers would use this model of geocentric coordinates by observing the movement of the stars and the movement of the sun and the moon, and having the pole star, the North Star, right in the center. So by observing these different constellations and luminaries, by their movement, they would plot positions, and that's how they would navigate through the seas. So here is the geocentric model. So this could be the orbit of Mars, or say Mercury, So this is the orbit of Mercury around the Earth. Add in the orbit of the Sun. So beautiful patterns here. Here we are adding the orbit of Venus. Adding some more coordinates, some more orbits. As you can see, they are all weaving into a very nice, beautiful pattern. So putting in all the orbits of all these planets, including planets like Jupiter. So those of you all who are lost, so what I just did is I was zooming out. I was trying to zoom out. So if you go back, now we are trying to zoom in. I'm trying to go back. So picture this. Now I'm trying to zoom in into this image. So when I zoom in, it would be something like this. So I've zoomed in, and there is the Earth in the center, and there we have the Sun. And when I zoom in further, here we have the orbits of the planets near the Earth. And further, when we zoom in, now we are taking out orbits of other planets. And there we are left with the Earth with the orbit of Mercury. So now I'm just zooming out, where we reach the outermost orbits of planets like Uranus. So as you can observe, they represent the verse in Bhagavatam, the description in Bhagavatam, where it is said that all these planets, they are like the lotus flower, and all these mountains are like the filaments around the center, which looks like Mount Meru. So whenever you want to picture the Bhu Mandala, we can picture a beautiful lotus flower. So nature really represents creation. There is a lot of art, there is a lot of Vedic geometry in astronomy, which kind of resembles certain patterns that you can see in a kaleidoscope or periscope. They kind of match the orbits around the Bhu Mandala. Now, what we have described so far is a two-dimensional aspect of the Brahmanda, the Bhu Mandala. But when you view it from a lateral point of view, it appears like a lotus flower. With all these planets, the outer planets, the outer islands taking shape upwards. Like you can see, the Earth planet may be situated much lower in this diagram. But all these islands and all these countries, along with their oceans, are above when compared to their orbital distance. We shall talk more about this. So when we speak of Kushadweep, so Kushadweep has grass flames, Kusha grass flames that give mild and pleasing brightness. They aid the nighttime growth of grains and has an ocean like ghee. And the demigod that rules this planet is Chandra. And elevated souls live here for 10,000 years and enjoy life by drinking Somarasa. So this Kushadweep, which if we try to see in the previous diagram. So Kushadweep is here. This is Kushadweep. But the position of Kushadweep has corresponded with the orbit of the moon planet.
So Bhagavatam describes Kushadweep to actually be the moon planet. So please do not confuse it with these planet-looking objects. They look like planets, they are not. They're actually residences of the Lokapalas in 4 directions on the Manasotra mountain. So putting that aside, so I request everyone to just take a screenshot of this particular slide as I describe the later sections. So Kushadweep, which is actually the moon planet, appears in the Vedic cosmology to have vegetation and to have demigods residing within those planets. But in modern times, a common human being from the earthly planets, when he points his telescope towards the moon, he only sees a gray desert with craters. So why is that? So in the 4th canto, Srila Prabhupada, in one of the verses, he had explained that actually what we are seeing is not the moon planet. It is but a 2-dimensional version of the moon planet known as Rahu. So this planet that we are seeing is Rahu. Now going next, we have Plakshadweep, which is the innermost island after Jumbotron. So here we have this huge plaksha tree that shines like gold. So there you have an image for illustration, and it has an ocean of orange juice or ocean of sugarcane juice. Then you have Salamali Dweep, which has a huge tree, and it is a residence of Garuda. And the residents here, they worship moon god. Now, the orbits of Venus, Mars, and Mercury, they coincide with Pushkar Dweep, which is on the outer edge, with Kroncha Dweep and Saka Dweep. So, as we all know, Kartikeya is considered as the commander of all the devatas, and in fact, he is the one who stands first and who organizes the battle fronts. So, at one point of time, Kartikeya, he destroyed all the vegetation in Mars. So, Mars is but a deserted region with no vegetation. But other regions, they have oceans. Like the Saka Dweep has ocean like churned yogurt with highly fragrant Saka trees. And there are residents here who worship Vayudev. So Mercury is not an empty planet that's floating in the void. And similarly, even Venus here has an ocean of clear, sweet water. And the residents here, they worship Lord Brahma. And it has a huge lotus flower, which is in the Bhagavatam, it is described, it is a huge golden lotus with millions of petals. And as we are moving out, here is an inhabited region, which in our solar system corresponds with the asteroid belt. So as we are moving out, we reach the orbits of Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. So Jupiter and its moon, which is located right here, if people cannot see, right there is Jupiter. And then we have Saturn right here. And then beyond that, Now, what I did in the next slide is that I expanded the region between Jupiter and Saturn. I have expanded this region. So let's try to zoom in there. So here you can see this is this vast golden reflective lands, and it is said in Bhagavatam it is not habitable for human beings because this region has land which is almost like a mirror. It's like a golden mirror, and anything that falls in this region, you will never see it again. So people do not occupy this region of land. But people do occupy these planets. So Jupiter, which represents the outer planets like Pushkara Dweep, and then we have Saturn, which refers to the different islands towards the outskirts. And then finally we have this mountain range, this circular mountain range, like a circumference. So this is the Loka mountain. Now, just a quick question, just to see if everyone is awake. What was the distance from Sumeru to the edge of Loka mountain? It's a one-digit value. Or it's one number value. If you can just shout it out.
It's 1 billion.
1 billion yojana.
Miles.
1 billion miles.
1 billion miles.
1 billion miles.
Who was the
Sorry,
child
2
who
billion
said
miles.
it? Who was the child who said it?
Atharva.
Very nice, Atharva. I'm glad you're paying attention here.
Sanjay Prabhuji, where is Goloka?
Could you repeat your question?
Where is Goloka?
Okay. We are talking about the material world. So if you were present in yesterday's class, we are still talking about the lower level. We haven't even reached the outskirts of our universe. What to speak of the outskirts of the material world. So the spiritual world is beyond this material world. So hold your horses, we will get there soon.
Atharva, you'll have to wait, huh? Wait.
So thus far, does anyone have any questions? No? Then let's proceed. So this area is the golden reflective lands until these Loka mountains. Now these Loka mountains, they are incredibly tall mountains, like the mountains that we described in Jumbotron and the mountains that we described outside of the earth, the Himalayas, the Mandara Mountains. They appear like insignificant ants when compared to the Loka Mountains. These Loka Mountains extend till the height of Dhruva Loka, or the pole star. And beyond the Loka Mountains, we cannot see. So as stated, the distance from this edge to the Loka Mountain is about 1 billion miles. Now, from the Loka Mountains, you have the same distance of 1 billion miles, and this is a dark inhabited land. And the sun, the light of the sun and the light from all the stars and luminaries and constellations, they do not reach this region of land. It is dark because it is blocked by the Loka Mountains because they are so tall. So as I had shown in the model that I had built, those white molds towards the perimeter or the circumference represented the Loka Mountains. So that region of land where nothing can be seen directly from the earth with the naked eye is known as Aloka Varsh. And at the outskirts of Aloka Varsh, we have the orbits for Uranus. And in some of the earlier drawings that I've seen, towards this region, we also have the orbits for Pluto. And as per Bhagavatam, they describe that Pluto is one of the realms of Yamaraj. Now this is a very interesting part of the class. In fact, it's one of my most favorite part of the cosmology because I like to understand complex things. By the way, this image that is behind you is an image of the supernova that has been captured by the Hubble telescope. So this is a real image offered by NASA. So the universe can be perceived as this organization with various people, with Lord Brahma on the top, who's engineering the creation under the direction of Lord Vishnu. And below him, there are managers, top-level managers, and below them there are other managers and supervisors. And like that, below them there are foremen, and below them there are workers. So this is how we can perceive the universe. There are different ways of perceiving the universe. The universe can be perceived with different point of views. Like for Mahavishnu, the universes are like bubbles that are clustered together, floating as the foam in the causal ocean. So these bubbles, just you can imagine this huge unlimited ocean with bubbles of foam clustered together. So our universes, individual universes, are like those bubbles in the ocean. So Mahavishnu, he perceives them as just a bubble. But the demigods who are present inside the universe can perceive the multiple planetary systems within the universe. Some of the lower demigods from the much lower subtle realms can perceive the entire Bhu Mandala and the Mount Meru, and they can see all the oceans and rivers and mountains. Now talking about the even lower species like the fly, this is what a fly would perceive. So my point is there are different perceptions around this multi-level cosmos. To illustrate this example better, so before I talk about this, I want to talk about how the scientists have come up with physical distances of the distances between the planets. So the modern scientists have concluded that the distance between the Earth and the Sun is about 93 million miles. And the Bhagavatam proposes 100 million miles, but the Surya Siddhanta is exact at 93 million miles. But Bhagavatam is not naive about these physical distances, because one needs to understand by simply perceiving the physical distances, one cannot understand the cosmology. One also needs to take into account the vertical or orbital distances of each and every planet. So although as per physical line of sight distance, the moon may appear closer to the earth, rather the moon is much further away because of its orbital hierarchy compared to the sun. So to explain that, here is an example of parents who are meeting a teacher. So although the mother is physically very close to the child, but the teacher is mentally close to the child because he understands the child. So there we have this understanding of distance. So although the mother is close to the child, she cannot really understand the child the way the teacher may understand. So this is how we can perceive physical distances and multi-level or multi-dimensional distances. It is something like this, where the line of sight may appear to be roughly about a few hundred miles, but actually the true distance is about millions of miles. But the understanding of the multi-dimensional cosmos and the ability to bend through space and time allows you to just travel this distance. But the actual distance would look something like this. So that is what I mean when I'm talking about physical distances. So one cannot regard as physical distances as standard or the yardstick or the tool for measuring how the Vedic cosmology perceives distances. So a rather easier way to explain that would be understanding the universe as a cosmic tree, as stated in Bhagavatam, Urdhva Mula Madha Shakha, that the universe is like an inverted tree with the trunk at the top and all the branches and twigs spread out at the bottom, with various planets stacked as per their spiritual hierarchy in a vertical level. So those of you all who were present yesterday, this would make more sense, because here we have the subtle forms first, as we have the subtle planets placed upwards, and then as we are going down, as the gross elements take over and dominate, then we have planets that are primarily formed of the gross elements. So while a person with the highest level of consciousness can perceive the entire cosmic tree with all the planets, but as you go down, this vision degrades and the scope becomes limited. So as we are going down, we can't perceive what is above us anymore. So here, towards the lower ends of the branches, we have the Earth as per the hierarchy of the cosmic tree. And there we have the moon placed here. Now, as per the Shastras, it is described that the only way through which a person can travel from the Earth to the moon is like this. He takes the route through the branches, and from the branches one can travel to those planets. Now we are not talking about an actual tree that is present out in the cosmos, whose trunk we are trying to find. No, this is just a concept that there are certain gateways that open up with advanced consciousness, and these are certain pathways that we are expected to take in order to reach those planetary systems. So one cannot simply travel the line of sight distance through a spacecraft. So this would be the physical distance, rather the distance that is given in our textbooks. But the cosmology suggests a rather greater distance when seen through the illustration of the cosmic tree. So this is how we can understand. Let us illustrate, let us explain it more further, because I'm sure everyone must have lost it by now. So these space probes that are sent to all these various planets, they only perceive the two-dimensional reality, and they only perceive what they're supposed to see. They only see what they're supposed to see. They can't see beyond it. So the moon planet, which we see, and the moon and the planet which we actually end up going is actually Rahu, which is the cause for all the eclipses. So Rahu and the moon, they are located in the same place with respect to physical distance. So if I were to draw a straight line to the moon, I would end up drawing a straight line to both these planes. But if I'm planning journeys, like NASA plans journeys sometimes to the moon, I might end up taking this route rather than this route. And because of that, we end up here in this desert of craters. And that is where we are meant to reach if we don't have the higher consciousness. Just how we can perceive a three-dimensional cube here, which is perceived simply as a square, a two-dimensional square in Rahu. Same example. What you perceive, what the demigods can perceive as the Manhattan city, because they are at a height, we can relate that height to a higher consciousness, hence they can see the whole plane. But us, because we have a lower consciousness, we can only access this map. So that is what I mean when I'm talking about Rahu and when I'm talking about the moon. The cosmology states, I am not only going to a different planet, I'm experiencing different features when I'm going to those planets, although they might appear to be the same because of their physical distances. So a person with the right consciousness, after performing pious activities, when he goes to the moon planet, he can perceive all these palaces. Whereas a person or someone who's just trying to explore these places and doesn't have the right qualification, they will only perceive the two-dimensional reality. So this is the vertical aspect of the multi-dimensional universe. As you can see, this is how all the planets are placed. They're stacked up based on their spiritual hierarchy. So this would answer Devendra Prabhu's question of how are all these planetary systems placed. So here we have the zoomed out version of the Brahmanda, in which one half of the world is filled with the Garbhodaka ocean, which is this portion. And then you have the Bhu Mandala with all its orbits, and it extends to about all the 4 billion miles, it extends till these 2 points. So the Bhagavatam describes that it doesn't really it doesn't really cover 4 billion miles. That is because the universe has some free space. The Bhu Mandala, there is some free space between the covering that is over here. So as per the Bhagavatam, where is it? So we only have So as per Bhagavatam, we only have the Bhu Mandala extended till this point. Beyond that, there is said to be some free space between the first covering or the eggshell and the Bhu Mandala. And this is explained as the space required by Anantashesh in order to balance the Bhu Mandala on his multiple hoods, because sometimes there are waves created in the Garbhodaka ocean by Kurmadev. So while those waves are created, sometimes the Bhu Mandala may move up and down. So that is taken care of with this free space. So that is adjusted. So the distance can be considered about 4 billion miles, put into perspective, accounted for the space that we have on each side, which is roughly about 3.9 million miles on both ends added up. So these are all the planets as they are stacked above. Here we have all the planets. If we had to see them with their physical distance, so if I had to locate Jupiter, it would be somewhere here. If I had to locate Saturn, somewhere here in terms of physical distance. If I had to locate Uranus, somewhere there. But when we see them through the spiritual hierarchy, they actually move, they are actually placed upwards. And this, all the planetary systems, they're only about 2 billion miles extended from the base of the Bhu Mandala all the way to the end. So one may think, how is that possible? Because when the telescopes they look out for stars, you can find stars at greater than 2 billion light years. So we are talking about distances that are 10 times, 100 times the height that is suggested in Bhagavatam. So how can we understand that? Like, are we able to see other universes? Are we able to see stars outside the universe? How do we understand that? So for that, the Surya Siddhanta explains through this image, which I tried to get. So almost everything in our universe, all the stars, all the constellations, the edges, all the galaxies, everything can be perceived within this circle. If you see, this is the outer shell of the universe. And this whole space is the solar system, which is rather, which should be rather insignificant when compared to all these galaxies. But they're taking up this big distance, and as we are going, the distance is reducing. So the way we look at it is, it's a logarithmic. As we are moving outwards through logarithmic expression, we are exponentially decreasing the distance to add it up in about 2 billion miles. So this is how we would do that. That all these stars, if we had to account for their physical distance, they would be something like, if we are talking about this distance, it may be twice or thrice this distance. So we are able to relate this distance equal to this, like that line equals this line, because of the use of logarithmic expression, where we dial it down each by an exponential of 10. So as we are moving out, we are not only exponentially reducing the distance, but we are also going back in time. So something that is perceived on this far end of the universe may appear to us as thousands of years, because that's the amount of time the light would take to travel. So we are actually being able to see the past as we do so. So to illustrate that, one can look at this beautiful pattern. So these patterns are actually embedded in this large kind of a pattern. So as we are going downwards, or rather outwards, we can see that it is kind of zooming out, and we are seeing a greater distance. So if I had to zoom in to this circle, for example, I would see this whole thing. And that is a kind of zoomed out version of what is present in this circle. And as I'm moving out, the resolution keeps decreasing till the point where it's a significant dot, as it's displayed here. So that is how all these planetary systems are fit into rather 2 billion miles. But this distance of 2 billion miles is only a perceivable physical distance. It's not the actual multi-dimensional distance. So here are all the planets that are scattered around the universe. But as per the Srimad Bhagavatam, they are stacked according to their spiritual hierarchy, with the more subtler planets all the way towards the top. And it gets grosser as the gross elements dominate. So at this point, one can see the Earth planet situated in this lower orbit on this plane of the Bhu Mandala. And here are all those mountains, and here is Mount Meru. Here is the orbit of the Sun planet, and above that, here is the orbit of the Moon planet, the celestial Moon planet. So it is said that at the time of death, when someone is ascending to the heavenly planet, when the living entity ascends to the heavenly planets, he takes this route where he is passing through all these lands. He passes through the Mount Meru. He sees all the cities, all the towns on top of Mount Meru. And then he passes above the Sun planet and finally goes to the Chandraloka, which is heavenly planet. So all the planets that are classified above Mount Meru are actually known as Swargaloka. So they are all the Divya Swargas. We have the Bhauma Swarg, which is located on this plane. They are earthly realms, earthly heavenly realms. Then we have the Swargaloka, the Divya Swarga, which is from the Mount Meru all the way up to the pole star. So let's move ahead. Also, we have subterranean heavenly planetary systems, or Billa Swarga. So if we simultaneously, of course, this is now a subtle way of perceiving it. When we go inside, when we try to dig through the ground towards the core of the earth, and simultaneously we are trying to travel through the lower half of the planet, then we perceive all these subterranean heavenly planetary systems that are below the Bhu Mandala. And there are various constellations and heavenly planets below. And these represent the hellish planets that are located rather right in between of all the planetary systems and the Garbhodaka ocean. So Bhagavatam, it's describing in the 7th canto that there are various planets with oceans of liquor, sugarcane juice, milk, sweet water, and ghee. So these oceans are, because one time all the disciples of Prabhupada, when they were looking at this map of Bhu Mandala, they said, well, you know, how do we perceive this? How do we get around the Bhu Mandala? Because this appears to be flat. So Srila Prabhupada at that time, he says, well, this is a stereographic projection. It's a planosphere projection is what he said. He said it flattens out in paper, but rather all these islands that appear as concentric circles in this map of a two-dimensional Bhu Mandala, they actually are planets that are spread across in the various directions. And all these planets, they consist of their individual oceans. So now we have a different understanding or a different perspective of all the planets. So that is why I was referring to them as islands and not varshas. So you may have the physical distance, and that is considered rather what we see in the science book as horizontal distance. But what we do not accommodate is this vertical distance. So if I had to travel from the Earth planet to that heavenly planet, which appears to be on the map to be somewhere here on the plane, I would rather have to use some kind of a spacecraft to travel all the way to that heavenly planet, which is kind of inaccessible. So one can understand that with this Shri Yantra, which is used in worship. It can also be called the Mahameru. So as you can see, they look like steps, as it is described in it is described in Bhugola Varnanam, where they describe Bhu Mandala as a terrace-like. It's a terrace-like land where you're kind of ascending. So these are the drawings of the Bhugol Varnanam. As you're going upwards, the orbits of every planet increases. So we can understand that with the Shri Yantra right here. So as we are moving upwards, the orbit keeps increasing. They're like orbits that are stacked one on top of the other. So that is how we can understand. Now we can picture this lateral view of Brahmanda very nicely, because now we are able to see all the planets which we were earlier seeing as concentric circles, as flat circles. Now all of a sudden we are giving them vertical orbits and stations. So now we are able to see a rather full picture. So for example, the planets like the Mars or the Mercury or the Venus, they have their clone heavenly planets, which are actually the celestial planets located right above their orbits. So if I had to plan a trip to the heavenly planet of Mercury, then rather than taking the physical distance, I would have to plan a trip with a rather multi-level, a multi-dimensional trip, because this would make me reach a planet which is just a two-dimensional aspect, just how we see the Manhattan city and the map. It would be the same thing once again. So to illustrate that, let us use this map, this graph, I'm sorry. So the physical distance of from the Earth to Venus, Shukra Graha, is like so. So this is the distance that we are familiar with. But if we take into account the celestial Venus planet, then we know that its orbit is placed some million miles above the actual orbit. It's actually the same orbit, but it's just placed above. So in order to make a journey, you will have to use some kind of a spacecraft that can bend through space and time and that can travel in a multi-dimensional manner. Like this. So although the distance, the physical distance may appear to be that, but in order to reach the planet, I may have to take this route. But because of the advanced spaceship, I can just jump across from that planet. So we can do that with our subtle bodies. We can do that with a spaceship that is capable, or an aircraft that is capable of doing that. Or we can just do that with our higher consciousness. So for example, in this graph, Plakshadweep is located very close to the Earth if we see the physical distance. But when we take into account the higher dimensional distance, it is much, much, much taller. Same goes with the illustration for the moon and Rahu. So this is the distance, the physical distance from the Earth to the moon. And this is what we know of. But the moon planet is located well above the Earth and even above the sun, if we consider. And Rahu is below the Earth orbit, because we need to take into consideration that the Bhu Mandala plane, as we are moving outwards, it kind of inclines down. So Rahu, as per that, would be located somewhere below the plane of Earth, and Sun would be somewhere here. And that's where the moon is. So now quickly running through some of the slides so that we can make time for the question answers. This would be the entire cosmic tree. Now this Shishumar planetary system, which is dealt with, I think, on the 20th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which talks about all the planets, all the luminaries, everything as a part of this, celestial dolphin, which is actually the external form of the Lord. And through meditation and through higher practice, one can actually see this form of the dolphin. But this Shishumar planetary system is even visible to us today. Can all of you see the dolphin?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes.
So you can just see this in this image. This is how the Shishumar constellation looks like. You can think of this as the mouth of the dolphin, and this as the body of the dolphin, and right here is the fin of the dolphin. So this is the Shishumar planetary system. All the luminaries present in the body of Shishumar. This is something that only the sages can perceive with great meditation. So, you know, it's very nice when you can actually see this. This is an image that someone clicked of the sky. So again, we can see the Shishumar constellation. And that would be the end of today's session. I would like to leave you all with this image of the higher realms. So just a quick question to everyone, just so I know that you all were attentive during this session. If so, I'm a space agency, and I'm planning a trip to the moon planet, and I take into account the physical distance from the Earth to the sun. From the Earth to the moon, and I plan the trip. What planet would I reach?
Rahu.
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 Please unmute yourself, bro. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
We all said Rahu.
Sorry. I heard Vaibhav Prabhu said Rahu.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhu. That is correct. So we'll end up going to the Rahu planet.
But actually, it is at the lower vertical kind of a system. So it's not above Earth; it's below. Right?
So
Absolutely, there is a proof.
I'm just trying to understand. So basically, Neil Armstrong went to Rahu, not to Moon.
So I will be talking about this, the moon landings of the 1969 Apollo missions. I'll be talking about it in great detail tomorrow, and what Prabhupada had to say about these missions. So we'll leave that as a discussion for tomorrow. As of now, does anybody have any questions?
So Prabhuji, the way I understand that if you have to really reach the moon planet, it is not possible with the current spacecrafts, because current spacecrafts can take us to the physical journey only, and with those it is impossible to reach to the moon. And second, the planet which we see in the sky, this might not be the moon, this might be rather Rahu, and the moon, which is very, very far away, might not be visible to us with this physical eyes. Is that a correct interpretation?
Well, everything you said up until now is correct, but the moon planet that we see from Earth is actually the celestial moon planet. But where we end up going is Rahu. Because the way if I had to explain everyone how space travel works, you don't really travel in a straight line.
Vaibhav Prabhu is requesting you don't disclose the suspense today.
Tomorrow you have something which is very, very amazing to talk about when Srila Prabhupada will speak about the moon planet.
Yes.
So maybe you can keep this suspense for tomorrow.
And whether Apollo really happened.
Oh my God.
No, I'm actually I'm actually struggling trying to hear everyone because I'm connected to two devices. So if I have to try to hear on someone, then I'll have to mute myself. Otherwise, there would be an echo. So I kind of missed out on what everyone said. So what I got was people want to keep the suspense for tomorrow. Yeah, this is not part of what I was going to discuss tomorrow. I was just broadly trying to explain everyone about space travel. So space travel, even what SpaceX or NASA or any of the space agencies, or even India for that matter, they don't make straight trips to the planets. They don't make trips with linear distances. The way it works is they orbit around the space. Maybe the board behind me would be a better illustration. So if I had the Earth, now you all will have to tell me if you can see it or not. Now if I have the Earth planet somewhere here, and if I had the moon planet somewhere there, so the space agency would they would orbit their satellite or their spacecraft in such a manner, and they would orbit it like concentric circles, but going out like the tail or the shell of a snail, till it has an angular velocity to escape the gravity of the Earth. And once it does that, then it's capable of going to the planet. So it travels in a very weird manner. So ultimately, when you reach, and if you're taking the physical distance into account, you may end up reaching another planet altogether. So one may think, oh, how is it possible that such a big space agency forgot to take that into account? But no, it's because one just cannot go to the moon planet. There is something which I was going to keep for tomorrow, and that is that Indra, who controls the Swargaloka, he has the capacity, he has the power to push down the is this blocking? No. Did you turn on? Okay. So Indra, he has the capacity, he has the power to push down any of the inferior living entities who try to visit heavenly planets, although they are unqualified. So many times, there are demons from the lower planetary systems who, like all of us, try to make journey to the heavenly planets, but they are unsuccessful because Indra, by manipulating space, is able to push the spacecrafts downwards. So although the space agency may end up going somewhere nearby, Indra is able to manipulate and push these inferior men downwards. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi Prabhu, I have one question. It might be out of context. Like some people are using this Vedic knowledge, and they are predicting something 2012 would be end and 2020 will be.
Prabhuji, we are not able to hear you. Can you be a bit louder? Your microphone is not clear.
Vedic knowledge, you are misguiding us, like this yoga will end at 2012, someone saying after that 2020, like that. by knowing all this knowledge, can we at least predict approximately like how many years Kali Yuga will be there, and how we can predict or how many years it will be? And another part of question is like we have 4 yugas, Kali Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, Treta, like that. Cycle will continue or Kali Yuga will be the end? If someone asks or someone says any misleading information, how to perceive or how to defend them? So it would be grateful if you get some light on this.
Prabhuji, were you present in yesterday's class? Because I'm assuming if you're asking this question, you might have
I
missed
was
it out.
waiting for
Were
the
you present yesterday?
presentation. Yeah, I presented. I was waiting. It may clear till today. So if you, I came to know that it is 4 to 3 yugas like that. But like if someone is misguiding, how we can receive that information? I would like to know. You give some light, so it will be useful.
Prabhuji, all we need to understand is the life. We divide time based on, we understand time based on the lifetime of Brahma. So Brahma lives for about 100 years. And as it is described in this book, it is described that we have 4 yugas, and each yuga, the previous age is double the age of the next yuga. So, for example, Kali Yuga, if we take the base value of Kali Yuga to be about 432,000 years, so Dwapar Yuga is twice the number of years of Kali Yuga. So it is about 864,000 years. And similarly, Treta Yuga is twice the age of Dwapar Yuga, and it is 1.2 million years. And similarly, Sat Yuga is 1.7 million years. Now, putting all of that together, we get about 4.32 million years, which forms one kalpa or one day of Brahma. And Brahma lives for 100 years. So, putting all of that into account, we get a huge number, which is about 311 trillion years, 311.4 trillion years. And the age of the universe is about 155 trillion years. We are somewhere in the middle. So if you want to understand where we are exactly, well, we are in Kali Yuga at the moment. We are on the 28th cycle of the 71 cycles of Divya Yuga, and we are in the 7th Manvantara out of the 14 Manvantaras, and we are currently in Kali Yuga with about 5,000 years past. So we are somewhere in the golden age of Kali Yuga. And when someone brings up the theory of when will the world end? So, you know, there was this movie which came up 2012, which was based on the Mayan calendar. And then there are some which say the world will end in 2020. So we need to understand, we need to use our intelligence. Should we trust the philosophy of WhatsApp chat, or should we trust the Vedic literature? So automatically, when your trust and your belief through logical inference and through intelligence, when you say, well, the Vedas or the Bhagavatam has more weightage over a WhatsApp message, then perhaps one can make sense. Or the Bhagavatam has a better understanding of what Google would say. So because everything that we know so far is limited to two understandings. One is Pratyaksha Praman and Anumana Praman. That is knowledge through sense perception and knowledge through logical inference. So everything that I see around, if I'm simply perceiving it through my senses, then I will have a limited scope because I'm seeing limited things. But when a higher being who has created everything, when he passes this knowledge through Shabda Praman, then one has a complete understanding. So Bhagavatam, which is part of this Shabda Praman, this evidence of the Vedic epistemology. So Bhagavatam talks about partial dissolutions which happen during the nights of Brahma. So that partial dissolution, there would be small pralayas that would take place at the end of every yuga, and then there would be one partial dissolution towards the end of a Divya Yuga cycle. So the next partial dissolution is in about roughly 400,000 years, you can say. So, or to be exact, about 427,000 years. So there is no, the world isn't ending anytime soon. So, you know, we can sleep peacefully. I was always having this question, who should I trust? Or should I trust the Mayan calendar or should I trust Srimad Bhagavatam? But then Srimad Bhagavatam gives more precise information of the ages and how the time passes. So obviously, through intelligence, we can conclude which understanding is higher or which understanding we should consider. So that is what I would recommend. With regard to discussions that you are having with people regarding this subject matter, I would say, you know, let's not debate about this, because people will not understand this concept. It requires a great deal of faith to understand the topics of Bhagavatam. So when we understand this time cycles, it's like trying to explain the ant about the life of a human. The ant lives for a couple days, but a human lives for roughly 100 years. So for that ant, this human life, the lifespan, it is too incredible. So that is how we perceive the lifespan of Brahma. So understanding time scales in this manner, it's a little difficult. It requires some faith. So whenever you're having discussions with people, just keep in mind that they don't know all this. So whatever they are saying, you know, you can just agree with them, but in your mind, you know, they are incorrect. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's cleared me. I can sleep peaceful and I can defend them also a little. Thank you so much.
No problem. Any other questions?
Sanjay Prabhu, thank you so much for the last statement that you just made. I think it has a very strong meaning to it and very impactful to keep ourselves calm and not get perturbed by people who are deprived of this knowledge, and when they debate. I think I get your point now. I mean, I used to do the same thing, but I think now I'm very conscious. I think it's a very good statement you passed on. It doesn't make sense because we are talking against something which is unreal. So there always will be a gap. Thank you so much.
You know, Prabhupada gives this example of the well, the frog in the well. So there is a frog that has come from the ocean, and he's trying to explain to the frog that is present in this well that what is the size of the ocean. So the frog in the well, he's like, okay, is it 2 times the size of the well? And the frog who has come from outside, he's saying, no, it is much bigger. Okay, it's 3 times the size, or wait, is it 100 times the size of the well? But he doesn't realize that the well is insignificant when compared to the ocean. So we need to understand the knowledge of these people is limited to whatever they have experienced, whatever they have read. But we have a complete picture. We see the higher picture because we are taking advantage of the Shabda Brahman. So whenever we debate with such people, we need to understand, well, you know, you're debating with like a 5-year-old who doesn't understand. So instead of explaining him things which he won't able to comprehend, rather just agree with him, and when he reaches at that stage, then you can perhaps give him that knowledge.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So I think that would be the conclusion of today's session.
Sanjay, you're done?
will we go out
Yes.
of Krishna?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you, each one of you all, to give us an opportunity to go through this session. Now, I want everybody for just 1 minute to be here.